Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel. It is me, the sassy blonde writer, here to talk to you about different types of story structure. Different stories must be told in different ways. Today I'm going to tell you all about the different ones that you can use and where they are most common. This is by no means an exhaustive list because there are a lot of different types of story structures, and honestly they're evolving, creating new ones and new story structures and narrative structures every single day. The following are elements of different plot structures that you will see regardless of what type of plot structure you are using. The setup. This is the beginning of the story, sometimes as referred to as the exposition, where you are introduced to all of the different characters, the setting, the main character, and you're kind of given a slice of life of what this world is for the different characters. Many times in the setup you have the hook, which is a device used to capture the reader's attention in the first couple of pages. This is different from the inciting incident, which we're going to talk about in a second, because all the hook does is grab your reader's attention and pique their curiosity. The hook is really just your moment for the reader, and that's all. It's not really doing anything to propel the story forward. Then you have your inciting incident. The inciting incident is the event that sets the main character or characters on the journey that will occupy them for the rest of the narrative. This is what sets the rest of the story in motion. Sometimes it's referred to as the call to adventure, like in the hero's journey, the catalyst, like in Save the Cat, the problem, like in A Million Miles in 1,000 Years by Donald Miller, or the exciting force, which is probably the funnest way to put it, in The Technique of the Drama, or also referred to sometimes as the inciting event or the inciting moment or inciting action. You get the picture. So the inciting incident can be a few different things depending on what the story you're trying to tell is. And if you have an active protagonist, meaning they're an active part of the story, or if you have a passive protagonist, meaning throughout most of the story they're just going to be reacting to what's happening to them as opposed to setting things in motion. So the inciting incident can be a choice that the protagonist has to make, like in Lord of the Rings when the hobbits accept Gandalf's call to adventure, or in When Harry Met Sally when Harry decides to, drive across the country with this girl, Sally. It can also be something that's outside of their control as the inciting incident, that the character is reacting to, like in The Hunger Games when Katniss hears that her sister is called in the reaping and volunteers as tribute in her place. She is making an active choice there, but she is reacting to something outside of her control. Or like in The Count of Monte Cristo, where Edmond Dantes, definitely did not pronounce that right, is falsely accused of treason and arrested and imprisoned without trial at 19 years old just before his wedding by someone who is in love with his fiance and jealous of his promotion. That sets the rest of the story in motion because it becomes a revenge story. In a mystery, the inciting incident is going to be the detective or the sleuth or the rest of the characters reacting to whatever the crime that was committed initially, or whenever the detective is brought in for the case or becomes involved or aware of what's happening. The inciting incident can also be new information or a new person that the protagonist meets that causes them to either question their beliefs or their values or just changes their course in life. So in a love story, this would be a meet cute, like in The Notebook when the two main characters meet, or like in The Great Gatsby when Nick meets Jay Gatsby, except, that was definitely a platonic love story between Nick and Jay, and everyone definitely believes that it was. Anyway, in a different type of story, like adventure or coming of age story, the inciting incident would be something like the hero learning that what they believed to be true isn't actually true, like in Jojo Rabbit when Jojo meets one of his late sister's friends who was Jewish and living in, Hitler's Germany, and Jojo starts to question the propaganda that he had been learning. Or in How to Train Your Dragon, which is a coming of age story where Hiccup tries to, kill a dragon with his ballista that he's built and knocks one out of the sky and into the forest, and then he learns that They're not as dangerous or as bad as he had grown up to believe. Next element is character growth or character arcs. A character arc is the transformation or inner journey of a character over the course of a story, because a story where the main character is static and doesn't grow or learn anything at all throughout is really boring. I talk about this more in my videos on character-driven stories versus plot-driven stories, so if you want more on that, check those videos out. Then you have the midpoint reversal. Mention plot twist or midpoint reversal. This, depending on what type of plot structure you use, will happen at different points in your story. It generally happens in the middle. Now, the midpoint reversal can be a bunch of different things. It can be a reversal of fortune. For example, in Groundhog Day, Bill Murray believes that his scheme has worked when Rita kisses him, but she immediately sees through the con and slaps him. It can also mean a reversal of approach. For example, in The Incredibles, Mr. Incredible worked inadvertently for Syndrome under the NPR. Here, he learns about the truth about the supers and how he will fight Syndrome, and the ally becomes an enemy. Your midpoint reversal is the oh snap or uh-oh moment. It can also be the main character achieving their original goal and then realizing another one. For example, in Assassin's Creed 2, Ezio, who was living in Italy during the Renaissance, was betrayed by a close friend of his father in the midst of a political coup d'etat. Ezio is ultimately unable to save his two brothers and his father from the betrayer, and all three are falsely convicted of treason and hanged. Now, this happens in the first 10 minutes. Yeah, it's about the first 10-20 minutes of the video game, so that's not really a spoiler. Here's the spoiler. Ezio actually gets to avenge his family. It's about halfway through the game. He actually gets to avenge his family pretty early on and kill the person who caused the death of his family members. But the story doesn't stop there. That's one of the reasons why this is one of my favorite video games plot-wise, because the story doesn't stop where you would probably expect it to normally. It keeps going past that. The midpoint is when he realizes his original goal and then decides he's going to keep going. It's not enough for him to just get revenge. He has more to do. He realizes there are bigger fish to fry. Then you have rising action, aka the build-up. The rising action is the section of plot leading up to the climax in which the tension stemming from the story's central conflict grows through the successive plot developments. So, for example, in the story of Little Red Riding Hood, the rising action includes everything that takes place after Little Red Riding Hood sets off for Grandma's house. Little Red Riding Hood deciding to go visit her grandma, that is the inciting incident. Then, the second she leaves to go to Grandma's house, that is the rising action. Up to the moment that she comes face to face with the big bad wolf. In other words, most of the story is the rising action, which is often the case. It's usually the longest part of the book, and it is used to build tension and suspense. I think in Save the Cat, this is also referred to as fun and games, and in the 7-point plot structure, there are several plot points and pinch points in the rising action as well, so we'll go into more detail. So those are some different details that can be added to your rising action to help you kind of flesh out how you build that tension. But overall, your rising action, if you don't need specifics, that's what you're doing. You're trying to build up to the confrontation or the climax. So the climax, or also known as the turning point of a narrative work, is the highest point of tension and drama, and it's the time where the action starts, during which the solution is given. And then immediately following the climax, or the confrontation or turning point, is the falling action, also known as the consequence. It's also referred to, if you're using problem-solution structure, called, the solution, is the phase of the story following the climax in which the main conflict is de-escalated and tension is further dispelled. And then you have the resolution, aka the ending. This occurs after the climax. It is when you learn what happens to the characters after the conflict is resolved, and they all lived happily ever after. So there are generally 4 main ways to structure your story. Sometimes they have different names, but it's all essentially the same. So you have 2-act structure like sitcoms, 7-point structure like Harry Potter, 3-act structure, most common in Hollywood, uses Save the Cat, and 5-act structure, which is the most common
in Shakespeare and also in mysteries. Each structure includes these. All I got for you today. Please, if you enjoyed this one, please hit that subscribe button. I post new videos 1 to 2 times a week. And of course, happy writing!